What if I told you that being a good person might be the very thing that's holding you back, and that the people you think respect you probably don't? You see, most people don't walk through life getting disrespected because they're weak. They get disrespected because they confuse being agreeable with being powerful. They think being liked is the same as being respected, and that's the lie that keeps them small. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wasn't just some cold-hearted political thinker. He was a brutal realist, a man who studied human behavior with laser precision. He knew that people aren't guided by ideals. They're driven by incentives, survival, and fear. And if you don't understand how power really works, you'll keep getting blindsided by people who do. Machiavelli wrote The Prince not as a call for cruelty, but as a survival manual for those who refuse to be dominated. And at the center of it all is one core idea: power is not something you ask for, it's something you command. But how? He taught that real power isn't loud. It's not about yelling or threatening. It's about predictability, clarity, consequences. If people don't know where you draw the line, or worse, if your lines move depending on the day, they won't respect you. Why should they? You've trained them to believe there's no cost to crossing you. Here's the brutal truth. You don't earn respect by being endlessly forgiving. You earn it by being the kind of person who acts calmly, consistently, and without hesitation when your boundaries are crossed. Machiavelli's advice? Be the person who doesn't threaten to walk away. Be the person who does, quietly, decisively, and without explanation. No dramatics, no begging, just absence. Because sometimes the silence of someone who commands respect cuts deeper than any outburst ever could. That's not heartless. That's strategic. You're not trying to scare people into obeying you. You're teaching them that disrespect has a cost. And once they learn that lesson, they'll never forget it. We're taught to play nice, to keep the peace. But what Machiavelli teaches is that true peace comes when people know exactly where you stand and what it costs to test you. If you've ever felt invisible in a room, if you've ever replayed a conversation thinking, I should have said something, this is your wake-up call. Respect isn't given for free, it's engineered. And if you learn how to set boundaries the way Machiavelli intended, clearly, coldly, and without compromise, you won't just stop being disrespected. You'll become the one no one dares to underestimate again. And that's just the beginning. Let's be honest. Have you ever felt invisible even in a room full of people? Like you're always the one who compromises, keeps the peace, bites your tongue, and yet somehow you're the one being overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated? Here's the truth no one tells you. People don't disrespect you because you're not nice enough. They disrespect you because you're too nice, and they know you'll never do anything about it. Society teaches us that niceness is a virtue, that if we're patient, generous, and forgiving, people will naturally return the favor. But here's what Machiavelli knew, and what psychology confirms. Niceness without boundaries is a trap. See, when your kindness doesn't come with limits, it doesn't feel like strength. It feels like weakness. When you say yes to things you resent, when you laugh off disrespect just to avoid conflict, when you excuse bad behavior in the name of understanding, you're not being noble. You're teaching people how to treat you. And that lesson is simple. You're not a threat. You won't walk away. You'll tolerate more than you should. And that's exactly why they keep pushing. Machiavelli would call this a miscalculation of human nature. He believed people are not naturally loyal or respectful. They're opportunistic. They respond to consistency, structure, and consequence, not to good intentions. So if you've been taught to be endlessly agreeable, you're fighting with the wrong weapon. You're bringing empathy to a battlefield where everyone else is using strategy. Here's the fix. And it's not about becoming a cold, heartless person. It's about being firm where it matters most. Start by recognizing this. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your time, energy, or kindness. Those things are earned, not assumed. If someone disrespects you, let your response be measured but unmistakable. No dramatic arguments, no need for revenge. Just quiet, consistent consequence. If they cross the line once, correct it. If they cross it again, cut access. You don't have to yell. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to act. And the more you do this, calmly, predictably, the more your presence begins to carry weight. Because eventually people will realize something powerful. Your kindness is not weakness. It's a choice. And when you withdraw it, the room gets colder. This is how you shift the dynamic. Not by trying harder to be liked, but by becoming someone who respects themselves so completely, others have no choice but to follow suit. If people don't take you seriously, it's not always because they dislike you. Sometimes it's because they don't fear disappointing you. And that's a dangerous place to live. There's a fine line between being respected and being tolerated. And what Machiavelli revealed, what most people still misunderstand, is that authority isn't built on love alone. It's built on consequence. But let's clear something up. When Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both," he wasn't glorifying cruelty. He wasn't telling you to become a tyrant. He was saying, if love is conditional, if people's loyalty depends on whether they feel good about you at the moment, then it's fragile. But fear, the right kind of fear, is solid. Fear of being cut off, fear of losing access, fear of disappointing someone who holds themselves to such a high standard that being cast out of their world feels like a loss. That's not violence. That's psychological gravity. And here's the real art: balancing that fear with warmth, with principle, with clarity. You don't want people to feel like they're walking on eggshells around you. That's not leadership. That's insecurity dressed up as control. What you want is this: when someone thinks about testing your boundaries, they pause. Not because they're afraid of your temper, but because they know you don't negotiate your values. Because when you build authority on clear lines and consistent behavior, people start regulating themselves around you. They think twice before disappointing you. They double check before assuming you'll say yes. They step up, not because you force them to, but because your presence demands it. The balance here is subtle, but powerful. Too much fear, and you create compliance without loyalty. Too little consequence, and you become background noise. The goal is simple. You want to be the person people trust, but also the one they don't want to lose. Respect without fear becomes flattery. Fear without respect becomes tyranny. But together, in balance, that's how true leaders are made. You must be warm, but not soft, compassionate, but not passive, decisive, but never reactive. So ask yourself, what do people feel when they're around you? Do they feel comforted and challenged, safe and accountable? Because the real magic happens when someone knows that they are welcome in your space, but only if they show up with the same integrity you do. That's not ego, that's self-respect. And people mirror what they feel. If you carry yourself with quiet certainty, with boundaries that don't budge, you'll command a respect that doesn't rely on force or flattery. It just is. And that's when authority becomes effortless. Real power doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for attention or argue its worth. It just is. People feel it when you walk into a room, not because you demand respect, but because you embody it. You've probably seen it before. Someone who speaks softly, but whose presence instantly shifts the dynamic. No chaos, no bragging, just gravity. That's what Machiavelli was pointing to all along. Respect is engineered through subtle cues, not loud declarations. It all begins with how you carry yourself before you ever open your mouth. The most commanding people are never frantic. They don't rush, overshare, or constantly check if they're being approved of. They move slowly, deliberately. They speak with intention, and they listen like everything said has meaning, because that's how you make people realize your presence isn't cheap. You become the opposite of needy. You become scarce, and that scarcity breeds value. But presence alone isn't enough. If you want to be respected, truly respected, you need boundaries, not vague preferences, not half-hearted "I'd appreciate if" statements. Real, unwavering boundaries, ones that mean something when crossed. And here's where most people fall apart. They set the line and then erase it when it's inconvenient. They say, "This is the last time," but forgive again. They talk about standards but don't enforce them. People notice. If there's no consequence, there's no authority. And without authority, there's no respect. So when someone crosses you, don't explode, don't over-explain, don't beg for change. Just act. Withdraw your energy. Change the access. Make them feel the shift. Because when people realize that disrespect doesn't earn anger, it earns silence, distance, and disconnection, they recalibrate quickly. Not because you threatened them, but because you taught them. I'm not someone who tolerates being devalued. This is the art of restraint. It's knowing that your strongest move isn't yelling or proving your point. It's simply walking away without a word. Letting your absence do what your presence couldn't. And that doesn't just earn you respect, it earns you influence. Because when people fear losing your trust, your energy, your presence, they step up. Not out of fear of punishment, but out of fear of regret. And that's a far more powerful motivator. You see, the world is full of people trying to be liked. They're everywhere, smiling, nodding, agreeing, explaining. But likability without clarity gets you nowhere. You become pleasant wallpaper, easy to ignore. The moment you stop needing to be liked and start holding people accountable for how they treat you, everything changes. Your words hit harder. Your time feels more valuable. And people begin to self-correct around you. Not because you intimidate them, but because they respect you too much to risk losing you. But none of this works if you're constantly available, constantly explaining, constantly trying to manage everyone's perception. You need to reclaim your space, your time, your energy. Learn to say less, to be less accessible. Because when you make yourself available to everyone, you become essential to no one. Pull back. Protect your energy like it's gold, because it is. When people see that your attention is rare, they start treating it like it matters. And here's the real twist. The moment you no longer need anyone's approval is the moment people start chasing yours. That's not manipulation, that's gravity. It's what happens when your confidence is built from within, not from other people's reactions. So if you want dominance, not in a cruel, egotistical way, but in the sense of undeniable presence, it starts here. Show up with self-respect. Speak when it matters. Act when you're crossed. And stop apologizing for having standards. People may not always like you, but they will remember you. They will adjust around you. And most importantly, they will never question where you stand. Because when you command respect without ever needing to raise your voice, that's when you stop being someone people tolerate and become someone they would never dare to cross.